Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast. My name is Mo, and I'll be sitting in the host chair today. We are welcoming back to the show Dr. Lem Usita, the identity specialist. Dr. Lem, what's
Yeah,
up?
right on. Thanks for having me on again, Mo. Looking forward to it.
Man, I know you're busy. And so, first of all, brother, how's life been? How are things going for the identity specialist?
Oh man, life's been pretty good. It gets pretty busy. Well, Southern California is a little bit cold today. Cold is relative, I guess, but it's in the 60s and that's cold for me. But
That is
no,
cold
man,
for you Southern California, San Diego. And
no, things are great, man. It's been really good.
yeah. Well, good, man. So today we're talking about a topic that I love on leadership, and we titled this podcast, Understanding Leadership Competencies, a
Yeah.
Pathway to Growth. And I wish that I could take credit for that, but that's actually one of the sections of some of the stuff that you're writing. So
Yeah.
before we get into it, Lem, why don't you tell me what were you thinking when you came up with this topic?
Yeah. So I have written down leadership lessons that I'm learning. And so as I share some of these ideas, this isn't just leadership things that I'm teaching. It's stuff that I'm learning myself and how I can apply it to my leadership development. This particular lesson came out of a lecture that I did. I used to teach leadership courses, and this is just one of the lectures. And what I did was I took competency as a theoretical framework, and then I overlaid that leadership principles and leadership on top of that to just give me some categories on how I can develop in my leadership. And so the four competencies and the four levels of competencies just give me categories to start thinking about my leadership development. And it isn't, like, so I use it for my overall leadership, but I also use it for very specific things. And but we'll talk about that as we explain the competencies. But yes, it's a learning theoretical framework, and you overlay leadership on it, and it just gives you categories to start developing your leadership. You know how like people say like, "Well, just get better as a leader."
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean? You know what I mean? What does it mean?
What does it mean?
Or they read a book and they think, "Well, I just need to do these things," and it's not as clean. I think these levels of competency really help you to kind of, this is where I'm at, and this is what I need to do in order to get to the next stage. And so yeah, as we go through it, I think some of that will become clearer.
Yeah, and that's what I really love about when I read this document for the first time. And I thought to myself, people need to know this, not so that they could just emulate it, but so that they can continue to make their own
Right,
leadership philosophy. Just like you said, you
right.
don't want to be somebody that is already doing leadership or anything.
Yeah,
You want to be you. And I think
right,
that's what you talk about with identity all the time, which is
right,
don't be somebody else, right? Be
right.
yourself. But how can you be yourself and continue to grow? And I think going through something like this helps because
Yeah,
it brings it to a conscious level. And so
right.
if we can, let's just jump into this. And I'm really excited about this because
Yeah.
for anybody listening, they're going to get, we fall into all of these categories that we're going to talk to. There's not just one
Mhm.
category that each of us falls into, and that's what's exciting
Yeah.
about leadership. So Lem, I wanted to take us through this, and so we're gonna explore the four levels of competency. We're gonna explore these, and so the first one is this: unconsciously incompetent, also known as ignorance of experience.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, first of all, it's a theoretical framework that already existed. I just kind of took it and overlaid leadership on it. When you hear the conscious part, just think of awareness, and then the competence is just having ability. You like the alliteration, you know?
I do.
So someone that is unconsciously incompetent, when you ask me, what are the common signs? Somebody that is unconscious about their incompetence, they don't know. They're not even aware of the signs. That's the hallmark of this particular stage. You don't know that you don't know. You're not aware that you don't have the ability to lead. So for the person that in this stage is unconsciously incompetent, they don't even know that they don't know. You know what I'm saying? think something has to happen outside of them in order for them to understand that, like, in order for them to gain awareness that they don't know. Either somebody tells them, or in their leadership, they fail, or they have some kind of inconsistency, or things just don't work, where they awaken to the idea of, like, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? I don't know what I don't know. Does that make sense? And so, yeah, it's really interesting when you ask what are the signs. Like for this particular person, they can't necessarily see it, but they don't know what the signs are. To them, they're just doing their thing. They need some kind of outside influence, a mentor, somebody to point out, hey, you don't know what you're doing. You know what I mean? And I think as leaders, we've all had those experiences where, we were called upon to lead in a particular area, and even through failure or through some inconsistency or somebody telling us, like, we awaken to the idea that, like, oh, maybe I don't know how to do this. Maybe I need to gain some ability. Maybe I need to learn how I can do this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So in this category, I mean, when I think of some examples myself,
Hmm.
I think of maybe a college quarterback who gets drafted into the NFL. And there's a lot of things
Yeah.
that you're good at what you do. Obviously, you're leading
Right.
at some level because
Right.
being a quarterback, for instance, is like the ultimate call to
Right.
leadership in sports anyway. But
Right.
am I thinking of it correctly? Because you get to a new level, and all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, there's a lot of things I don't know, and the only reason you know that is because the old guard, the old guys, come and
Yeah.
say, hey, you're at a new level now. Now you need to start thinking about these things. Am I on the right track?
Yeah. No. For I mean, using that particular example, like when you level up from college to the NFL, like there is a whole PR side of this thing that, like, a lot of professional players, like, get in trouble. You know what I mean? Because there's an image, there is a brand, there's PR side of this thing that, like, as a college, player, you didn't necessarily have to pay attention. Well, you do have to pay attention on that level, but when you level up to the next thing, it's all a new experience for you. So you don't know what this experience is like because you've never had that experience. And you just don't know what you don't know until you, well, that's why you get the training, and that's why you get the PR training. That's why you learn and you pick up the knowledge. Yeah, but that's exactly it. Like, if you're going to level up to that next experience, you don't know what you don't know. You can't ever start a new job with 5 years experience. Just can't. You know what I mean? You got to go through it. You got to experience that job. You got to experience that role in order to get that experience. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I want to hit on that and have you expand on what it means to level up in leadership a little bit more, because in leadership, we can throw around terms, we can throw around phrases. In business, we can do that, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
and words matter, definitions matter. So, why don't you tell our audience, what does it mean when you talk about leveling up in leadership?
Okay, let me use the example. You know what? This will be better. This would make better sense if we talked about leveling up in in the last level. Does that make sense? Because you go through this process, and so then
Okay,
what does it mean to level up? So let's put a pin in this, and let's hit that leveling up after the fourth
man,
competency. That
I
makes
love it.
sense?
I love it, man. I love it.
Yeah, it'll just make it all make so much sense.
For sure.
But let me, like you said, the words matter. As I was thinking through, like, the levels of competency, I was trying to think of an example that kind of helps us, walk through each one of the levels. And the example that I came up with is driving, right? When you are 12 and you want to drive, like, first of all, legally you can't. You know what I mean? So it's all just a desire to get behind a car. You may love cars, but at 12 years old, legally you just can't do it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Yeah.
you've never been behind the wheel. You don't know what you don't know. You're not conscious of what it means to drive and to be on the road and go 65 miles an hour. But you just don't know because, well, you're not old enough to know. You're not at the place where you can know. So that is that level of unconscious incompetence. At 12 years old, you know nothing about driving. You can't know anything about driving. Legally, you just can't do it. But there might be this desire to want to drive. But you just don't know what you don't know because you can't do it. Does that make sense?
It does.
And so like that 12-year-old wanting to drive is at that level of unconscious incompetence. As a leader, like back, into that leadership, you might be put in a leadership role because of natural ability or luck, you know what I mean? But as you're in it, again, the inconsistency, or the inability to lead, it's like the failures, like those are all hallmarks of somebody that is unconsciously incompetent.
Yeah. So before we get to the second point, give my listeners maybe one or two actions that they can take to move out of this first level of being unconsciously incompetent. How do we get out of that? I mean, if I don't know
Yeah,
that I don't know, I mean, what am I going to do as a leader? Like for
yeah,
a brand new leader out there, for a leader who's been a leader for 5, 10, 15 years that maybe thinks they know everything,
yeah,
how do we get out of it?
yeah. So there is, like I was telling you, like in this level, the only way you can know is something outside of you making you aware of that, right? Like, because if you're unconscious to it, you can't see it. So somebody has to help you see it. And so being around people you trust that build into you, a mentor, another leader, somebody that knows, I mean, that's typically what you do. Think about your NFL example. Like if you come into the league, you always have a trainer, a coach, you have somebody speaking into what you don't know. Does that make sense? So paying attention to what's happening outside of you, surrounding yourself with people that can talk into your leadership. Like we all need that team. We all need a coach. We all need a trainer. We all need somebody to help us get get to a level of awareness so that we can know what we don't know. That makes sense?
It does. So here's what my takeaway is for this point. You can affirm it or add to it. For our new leaders out there, you need to have mentors and coaches. So don't
Yeah.
go it alone. Okay. So
Right.
that's the first thing. If you're a new leader and you're listening and you're thinking,
Absolutely.
I don't have men and women speaking into my life right now, you need to go out right now today, text somebody, call them and say, look, I just need for you to speak into my
Right.
life. So that's the first
Yeah.
point. But the
Yeah.
second one is more important to me, which is if you are a seasoned leader out there and you have moved from this and you've been doing
Yeah.
leadership a while, it's your job to pay it forward and go find the leaders that want to
Yeah.
grow
Yeah.
and speak into their lives. And
Yeah.
am I on the right
No,
track?
no, no. That's exactly it. I'd love to add like one other piece. As
Yeah.
a young leader, no matter where you're at, have have a vision for what your leadership can be. Have goals that help you get to where you need to be as a leader. And sometimes just having that helps you to then take a look at what you're doing and you just keep going back to vision, you just keep going back to the goals. And then like you were saying, having mentors, having people to make you aware of what you don't know to kind of really help them through. For sure.
Man, I love it. So leaders, get out of that first one as fast as you can. That brings us to the second point of understanding our leadership competencies, which is number two, consciously incompetent, what
Yeah.
is also known as the power of awareness. So, take me through that. And I guess the question I would have is once a leader becomes aware of their gaps,
Yeah.
what strategies, mindsets,
Yeah.
etc., do you recommend for embracing this
Yeah.
uncomfortable but really important and vital stage of conscious incompetence?
Yeah. So if in the first stage, you just aren't aware, once you gain awareness of your incompetence, like, I think that's the beginning of the journey. I think that's the beginning of like, like you were saying, leveling it up. And so knowing and being aware that you don't know, it really is the first step toward leveling up. And I think that awareness of what you don't know really kind of helps you um, grow in your leadership ability. But I think the biggest thing about this particular stage is to take on the humility to understand that you don't know. You know what I'm saying? To to put yourself in a place where you look up to the mentors, where you look to the leadership knowledge, right? And when you start reading books and in this stage, you first gain the knowledge that you need in order to level up, but then you practice, right? And then you get some feedback from a mentor or from your team, and then you go back to the knowledge and then, do I truly understand this? And then you practice some more, and then you get back to reflection and you get back to evaluation from your mentor or your team, and then you just keep working the process. And the thing about conscious incompetence is you're thinking through it, right? Like there's a strong awareness of it. You're thinking about all of the steps. Does that make sense? You're taking the knowledge that you're learning and you're
Yeah.
practicing.
So what for me, and I've already read through this obviously and done a lot of research and reflection on my own. But
Yeah,
when I come back to this point, this seems to me in my own life, and I think a lot of people might have the same feeling. This is really the most humbling
yeah.
of the
Couldn't you took
four,
that.
right? Because
Right,
you know that you're not good enough. You know what you're
right.
missing, and for leaders that mostly just have to have a healthy ego. If you
Uh-huh.
think that you should be leading a team, and then you
Yeah,
come in and you realize you don't know some stuff, like man, that for me, I'm just like, wow, I just now I know I don't know this stuff. So like, how do you get how do you get above that? How do you move into the place where you're working on yourself? Now that I know that I don't know this stuff, what do
yeah.
I do?
Back to the goals and visions that you have for yourself as a leader. When you come back to those goals and visions of like, this is the kind of leader that I want to be. I mean, humility kind of helps you get there. You know what I'm saying? But then also, like, I don't know, like, if you have like just that drive inside of you to become better, like, this stage of consciously incompetent is like an amazing opportunity for me. Like the way that I see it, like yes, you need the humility to listen to others and to take on more information. For me, it's new opportunity. It's growth. Like I'm gonna just become better as a leader once I recognize my incompetence. Like it's just the beginning of like taking that next level, leveling up our leadership. And so I
Right.
think it's pretty exciting. I think it's opportunity for us, if you can take on that humility to become better.
Yeah. So I would assume that at this stage, you probably would have mentors, coaches in your life. So how do we, in this stage of being consciously incompetent, how do we use feedback from mentors and coaches? And how can leaders use setbacks as learning opportunities?
Well, as you're learning about leadership and as you're gaining knowledge and as you're leading work, like if you have the ability to do the work, you can take a look at a principle. Take any one of Maxwell's principles. You can take a look at that principle and like, all right, am I, or actually he calls them laws. You can take a look at any of those laws and like take a look at your life and say, all right, am I doing that? Right?
Right.
The law of the leadership lid, right, is you can only take people to where you've been yourself. Like if you're a
Right.
level 5
Yeah.
leader, you can't take someone beyond your leadership lid. I mean, it's a pretty simple law. And so like using this competency theoretical framework helps me to understand in order to become a number 6 leader, you got to understand, you guys have the humility to understand that I'm a number 5 leader first. But in order to become a number 6 leader, I need to do all of these things in order to level up. And we'll get to that. I promise we'll get to that. But
Yeah.
but you see what I'm saying? Like
Yeah, I do.
it's easy then to read these books and take one of Maxwell's laws and like put your life and your leadership ability against that to see where you're at. You know what I'm saying? And it takes humility to own the fact that like in this particular area of my leadership, I'm at level 5. And
Yeah.
you can be okay with that, or you could level up, or you can step it up. So it's opportunity, man. This stage is opportunity to like level up. I
I
thought
love
we
it.
were going to talk about it at the last stage, but it kind of works.
Yeah, it really does. So as a leader, I start out, I'm unconsciously incompetent. Then I somehow get to become consciously incompetent. And now I'm really feeling
Yeah,
down on myself because I'm not a very good leader. And I want to quit and I want to give up because I just realized I'm screwing everybody else up.
yeah,
But then I listen to my mentors, I listen to my coaches, I make some adjustments, I make some changes, and then I move to
yeah,
level 3, which is consciously competent skill in progress. Take me through that.
Yep. So when you're consciously confident, you're aware of this new ability that you've gained in leadership, right? And you're thinking through, you're strategizing. And so you're able to lead and you're able to do the things that the books say, but it's still like you're thinking through it. As I was thinking through this, and you helped me with this. You were a swim coach. Like swimming is the perfect metaphor for this thing. You take on somebody that's unconsciously incompetent. They may have some talent, they may have some physical abilities, but they don't know what they don't know. And then you move them into the next level where they're aware of their inability, and then you teach them in order to get better. Then when they get to this stage, it's consciously competent, like they're actually doing well, but they're still like in their they're still thinking about how many strokes. They're still thinking about how far things are. They're still
Yeah.
kind of in their head
Yep.
about what it is that they're doing. They have the ability, but
Yes.
it's not quite it's not quite at that top level of second nature, which is that last level, because they're still in their head and they're conscious. They're aware of every stroke, of every kick, of every meter that they're moving. Like they're just kind of in their head about leadership. They're able to do it, but they're still kind of in their head. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And so I guess the question I have is when a leader reaches the consciously competent stage, what does the process of intentionally applying their skills look like on a day-to-day
Yeah,
practice?
it's well, that's exactly what it is. It's taking the knowledge that you know about leadership and then practicing, right? Just
Yeah.
practicing, doing it again and again. Take whatever law, take whatever leadership principle you want, and just practice and practice and practice. Some people are great with people, and some people aren't, right? And so if one of the things in your leadership development is to be better with people, then be with people, hang out with people, and spend time with people, and practice being with people so that you can be better. You just posted something about relationships, right? And knowing people, knowing how you relate to people, and knowing about other people, how people relate to them better. And so, in order to get better at that leadership principle, you take these leadership principles and you just put it into practice. You do the feedback loop of evaluating and reflecting, and then you do it again, and then you just get better, and you get better, and you get better.
So what about somebody who's not great with people skills? I mean, that's why they're people skills, right? Because you have to get
Right?
better with them. I think there's a lot of, I mean, for all of us, we've had to
Yeah.
learn how to become better and become consciously competent working on those skills. What do you say to somebody who says, man, I just need
Yeah.
people?
Well, I think one of the principles for me for leadership is you lead out of who you are, right? And
Yeah.
so a lot of times you read these leadership principles and you look at these leadership, gurus, and they're all rooted. They all need to be upfront.
Right.
And so, like, so then we create this picture in our mind that we need to be extroverted. We need to be more extroverted as a leader, right? And we need it, like, even just in relationships, like extroverts, kind of love people and kind of love interacting with people. And so, like somebody that's extroverted, are they a better leader than somebody that's introverted? I mean, they might look like one, but when it comes to strategy, thinking through things, like the extrovert, gonna like blurt out the first thing that comes to their mind. They haven't thought through stuff. Like, you know what I'm saying? So they may have strength in relationships and being upfront and being with people, but extroverts don't typically spend the time to think through what it is that they're saying. It's just like throwing stuff out there. You even said that in one of your charts, when you're throwing out like,
Yeah.
principles and you just throwing stuff out. Like if you're an extroverted leader, you're just kind of doing it without
Yeah. You
thinking
just say
in
it.
this level. Yeah, in this level. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, like, so working at it, like it's gonna look like who you are, right? And so getting getting a better understanding of who you are as a leader, introverted or extroverted, good with people or not good with people, like helps you helps you to become the best kind of leader that you can be because you're leading out of who you are. And so it may not look like upfront, big, loud with the hands moving. You may be the guy that's doing it all in the background and you're making moves, but like no one ever sees it. And that's okay. Like there's some great leadership ability in being able to do that. And like, there's a lot of people that have those kinds of strengths that organizations and teams need in order to move forward. Does that make sense? So you lead out of who you are. You lead out of your strengths. You lead out of your abilities, and you just like keep practicing those leadership principles in light of who you are, right? Not in light of what you think it should look like or what somebody else does. Because if you're always going to be the second rate somebody else, if that's what you're going to do. And you can be the first rate yourself if you lead out of who you are.
Yeah, I got a couple thoughts on that. One, for those leaders out there who are extroverted, and you're right, a lot of times the extroverted leaders are the ones that are easy to spot because they are out there and being
Mhm.
flamboyant and loud,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I use my hands a lot, but it's
yeah,
it's really what I call the ready fire aim principle. It's just like you're just kind of doing it, and some
yeah.
leaders are good at that because they get enough information, they put it out there, they make a decision, and then they can kind of clean it up if they have to, and that's great, that's
Mhm.
fine. But then for introverts, a lot of times,
Yeah.
so one of my mentors years ago said, give me an extroverted leader and I'll work with him or her, but it's going to be hard because I already think they know everything. But give me an introverted leader and they're going to be quiet and they're going to take a little bit more time maybe because I need to get them out
Mhm.
there and
Mhm.
but once the introverted leader becomes competent in leadership, they're
Mhm.
unstoppable.
Mhm.
I mean, those are the leaders that we want because
Right.
they're the ones that are just they're just naturally more thoughtful in the process. And I
Yeah,
mean, I
they're
take
processing, they're
yeah,
strategizing. Yeah.
yeah, and I take my clients through the DISC assessment, and you and I were talking about that, and we're actually going to
Yeah.
be collaborating and doing some stuff with our companies for our
Yeah.
clients on that. But in the DISC assessment, of those D's and I's, so the dominant personality or the inspirational personalities, they're just out there. But a lot of times those subdued or those conscientious
Yeah.
ones, they're kind of sleepers. And a lot of times I take my clients to and they say, "Man, Mo, I'm just not out there. I'm not the kind of person to get." And I say,
Yeah.
"Man,
That's
I can't
okay.
wait till you feel good about this because when you feel good about leadership, you're going to be
Yeah.
unstoppable." And so
Yeah.
I want to give a book recommendation, and I know I'm going to give you some time at the end, as I always do, to give your what are you reading or what are your recommendations right now. But since we're on this point right here, it doesn't matter if you're introverted or extroverted. One of the best books that recommendations that I was given by one of my commanders in the army,
Mhm.
who was a great leader, very quiet man. Everybody, he makes good decisions, sound decisions, takes his time, which takes a lot of people off, but he always makes great
Mhm.
decisions. And he said,
Mhm.
you need to read Quiet Leadership. And it's by a guy named David Rock. Leaders, if you haven't read Quiet Leadership yet, it is really a great way for you to just transform who you are as a leader. And so pick up that book. I'm sure you can get it on Amazon or whatever. But read it and let me know in the comments what you think about it. And it really is going to make you a better leader. So that's what I have to say about that.
That's awesome. That is
Yeah.
awesome, man.
So any final thoughts on number three, being consciously competent? I mean, Lem, how would you encourage leaders to manage the pressure of knowing that what they should do while still needing to consciously
Yeah.
think about each step? Like, give some encouragement. Like, what do you do in this stage?
Oh, yeah. And thinking through the stage, I think there's a lot of leaders that can do really, really well in this stage. To be consciously competent, I mean, you're competent. You have the ability.
Right.
You have the awareness. Like, this is not a bad stage to be in. You can be super successful in this consciously competent state. You know what I mean? And like you can get a lot done in this stage. This leads us then to like, but if you want to level up, you know what I mean? If you want to get to that
Yes.
next level, um, you really need to get to the point where you're unconsciously confident. Hopefully, this is a good good time to like jump into this next thing.
Great segue. Which point four is you become unconsciously competent.
Where,
I love this mastery in
yeah,
action, man. Just
yeah,
I love this. So take us
where,
through, explain to us what it means for a leader
yeah,
to reach this stage where leadership becomes really second nature. And it
yeah,
really, what are the pitfalls? What can you be excited about? What
yeah.
can you be worried about? Is there complacency? I mean, take us through that.
So if consciously competent is going back to your athletes when you were a coach, if a consciously competent, like they're good swimmers, but they're in their head and they're thinking about every stroke and every kick. I think the unconsciously competent swimmer is someone that's just in a flow state. You know what I mean? They've done all the practice, they've done all the counting, they've done all the training. So when they get up on the block, they're ready to go. They're not out in their head about it. You know, the gun goes off and they're just in a flow state. It's just second nature. It's just, they're not even thinking about it because it's become so much a part of their lives. And the same with leadership. These are the leaders that aren't necessarily in their heads. They're not like strategizing as they're leading. They're just leading instinctually. They're just leading because they practice it and they train so much and they know their competency. They know their level of ability and they're just leading at a really high level. And it's not unconscious in a bad way. It's like unconscious in a way that you're not even thinking any longer. Like it's just flowing out of who you are. It's second nature. Is that I mean, is that a good picture? Like, have you seen like your athlete in a flow state? Like these are the winners, right? They know they're gonna win. Like it's in there. They just know they're gonna win, and I mean, there's no stopping them. That level of competency that this last stage is talking about.
Yeah, it is. And so what I think as a swim coach is Michael Phelps in the 2008 Beijing Olympics. And this is when he
Hmm.
got his 8 gold medals and he's doing the 100 fly, which he was going up against a guy named Kavich, who was an incredible flyer. And so they were neck and neck. And Michael Phelps was unconscious in just the things that he does. Every stroke. I mean, he could swim. He could swim blindfolded. That's how much he knew his stroke. And at the
Hmm.
very end, he knew that he was going to be outtouched by this guy. And so he just instinctively takes another stroke, which is the worst thing to do in swimming,
Right,
unless
right.
you're Michael Phelps. It was
Instinct.
mastery. It was
Yeah,
instinct. And
yeah,
everybody that watched it thought, what is he doing? But after you hear at the very end and you kind of go through it and he ended up winning the race,
yeah,
that's mastery. When I think about, doing something so much, so long that your body just knows it.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
those are the kind of athletes that I look for. And that's
yeah,
why, being a student athlete is so hard. Or an athlete at any stage, really, because if you want to master uh, your field, in that case,
yeah.
athletics, you really have to do the repetition. And I think for leaders, a lot of people don't want to do the hard stuff, right? And so
Yeah.
for our leaders out there, really, it's about doing the little things, the mundane,
Mhm.
doing the things consciously long enough so that it becomes
Yeah,
unconscious. That's right. That's
yeah.
what I get out of it.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. Where you're in flow state, where you're
I
doing
love
things
that, the flow state.
instinctually, where
Yeah.
you're just, I mean, and it's unconscious in the fact that you're not thinking about all the little details. Like there's just something that it just flows right out of you. Absolutely. And
So
one of the other examples that I
yeah,
have of this is when back to driving. You know, like. I've been driving for years now, for decades. And so like when I get behind the wheel, I remember when I first started driving, like you're aware of where your hands are and you're like you do
yeah,
all of the things, you follow all the
that's
rules,
right.
like
Yeah.
this is the book. Right. That you know, that's that consciously competent you're thinking through things. But like now when I drive, it's like I get in the car, I turn the car on. I mean, I do all the things. Sometimes I signal, there's saying, but like I'm not even thinking about that anymore. And I just change lanes. I drive with one hand. I just don't pay attention to any of it. And like it's become like unconscious, but like I'm still pretty good at it. You know, I have high level of ability and I'm not necessarily like thinking about every little step in things. You know what I mean? And so like it's one of the examples that I can think of that I'm like, man, I just whenever I drive, it's an unconscious confidence. I get to where I need to get. I don't get a ticket. I don't get in an accident. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, even today, there was like someone on the road and they were just walking on the line. And I went around them like it didn't faze me, whatever. You just like, you just avoid things because, you're just in that flow state when it comes to driving.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny you said that. I think because I've been riding motorcycles for my entire adult life, and
Yeah,
it's kind of funny because yeah, I've taken the defensive driving course or defensive riding course, and they teach you how to be instinctive. But the funny thing is when they one of the first things that they tell you in that is you always need to be as a motorcyclist, you always have to be conscious of what's going on around you. So
yeah,
there's like a give and take because when you're on a motorcycle, you're smaller than the rest of these
yeah,
big cars. It doesn't matter
yeah,
how good you are.
yeah. There's nothing around you.
A car is always going to win.
Yeah, yeah,
But the reason that they take you through these defensive riding courses is so that when you get into what we call the weeble wobbles, because the wind hits and you're going to go down, how to get out of
yeah,
that,
yeah,
how to press into the where you want to get out of. You actually press into that because it takes you the other way, which
yeah.
is crazy, because
Right,
instinctively you would want to do the other thing, but you have to do it long enough and practice it so that it can
right.
become unconscious when it needs to be. Same thing. So I think
Yeah,
about this.
yeah,
Why this level is important, Lem, is and maybe you could speak to it, is that the more you master, the better you're going to be able to deal with crisis. Because when crisis happens and people need you to make decisions, you have
yeah,
to have a level of consciousness that moves way beyond so that you're
yeah,
already doing the things that are important so that you can put those
yeah,
fires out. Because a lot of times you don't have time to think. You just got to do it.
yeah. Let me give you another driving example. And this is where we talk about the leveling up. Okay. So unconsciously confident, that's how I drive now. I don't even think about it. I'm a good driver. I know I'm a good driver. I think I'm a good driver. But a couple of years ago, um I went to the Porsche driving experience. And so it's out in LA and you get in the Porsche like a 911 turbo, like it's a
Dude,
fast
sweet.
car and you're on the track, right? I mean, and you're flying around the track. But the first thing that they do is they get you on the track and they drive you to the back part of the track. And there's a smaller track there. And on the smaller track, they they want to know that you can drive this thing fast. They want to know that you can turn this thing fast. And they want to know that you can stop this thing fast, right? Because like you're driving 130, like I don't drive 130 on the freeway. Like I just don't do that. But driving on a track with a car that's tuned for the track is way different. It's another level of driving that I've ever experienced. And I remember like you had the trainer, there's a radio in your car, so the instructor is walking you through like launch control, driving, turning, and braking. And they're watching you. And you don't get on the track until you can prove to the instructor that you can take off fast, turn fast, and then stop really fast. And there was this one particular turn. So we learned how to do launch control and you take off. And those cars are 0 to 60 in seconds. And like what you had to do, you had to launch control, take off, and you had to do this one turn at like 80 miles an hour. I don't do turns at 80 miles an hour, right? Like that's not normal. And like you're going faster than that before you get to the turn. And the instructor says you can only hit the brake once. Hit the brake once, make the turn, and then come back around. And it took me like 4 times before I could do it because instinctually I would be driving 80 miles an hour around this curve and I would freak out and then I would hit the gas, I would hit the brake again in order to slow down further.
Right.
And it took me 4 turns to understand that the capability of the car was up here and my driving ability was down
Yeah,
here. And
absolutely.
in order to level up, I needed to be scared and I needed to feel what it was like. And once I realized it, like, oh my gosh, this car can handle this turn at 100 miles an hour. But my ability was to do this turn at like 30 miles an hour. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was way beyond my ability to do this turn. So it took me 4 times in order to get to the point where I was able to do this 80-mile turn with just hitting the brake once, right? And I was able to stop the car. Lost control was easy. Stopping the car was easy because we just like slammed on the brake. But like this turn was very difficult. And I realized that my ability to drive was far inferior to the car's capability. Like the car can handle anything that I could
Right.
have done. I just hadn't leveled up yet. And so back to this whole unconscious competency. Like when I drive, it's unconscious competency until I'm put on the track. On track driving to a car that's tuned to drive on the track. It was a whole nother level of driving that I didn't know about. And then all of a sudden I went from unconscious competency in my driving
Right.
to I was made aware in a very real sense because you're driving this, $150,000.
So
You know,
cool.
I was made aware
Yeah.
of my unconscious incompetence, and I
Right.
woke up to it, and I was like, in order to make this turn, I need to learn how to do this. And so that's just a leveling up. Like once you're in unconscious competency and in your leadership, like you're gonna level up. You got to put yourself into something uncomfortable and something much bigger. And then you move into this whole cycle of like, oh, I don't know that I don't know because this is a whole other level of leadership that I never experienced.
Right.
But what this theoretical framework helps us to do is helps us to see where we're at in our leadership journey, to know that in order to reach
Right.
the next step, this is what I need to do. But in order to level up, I need to put myself in something uncomfortable and make this turn that I've never made before and go through this whole thinking process again in
Yep.
order to get to like this higher level, this new level of leadership. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So let's talk about leadership as a fluid process then, because
Mm-hmm.
once you know these leadership competencies,
Yeah.
there's different levels and different skills, right? And you said
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you were up and then you had to come down, you had to become conscious again. So
Yeah.
so you mentioned that leaders can be in different levels and various skills. So how should a leader approach identifying where he or she stands in each skill area? Like, what do they do? What's the
Yeah.
action point?
Again, back to you lead out of who you are, right? Some people can work on multiple things. I think at the higher level of leadership,
Right,
you can look for things. But But as you're growing and as you're developing, I mean, focusing on the one thing that gets you the most bang for your buck, the most return for your investment, like focusing on that one thing based out of, again, your personality, your leadership, your learning style, like just to focus on that one thing and leveling up in that one area, I think really helps you. And so if it's in relation to relating to other people, or if it's an administrative task, like I need to level up on my administrative abilities so that I don't look like I don't, so I can look like a professional, so I can look like I know what I'm doing. I, I don't know what it is, but if you lead out of who you are, you can take a look at your strengths and weaknesses. I think focusing on your strengths really, really helps and then shoring up your weaknesses with either help or a team or a teammate to kind of help you do that. I mean, it's going to look differently for everybody, but I think focusing on your strength, going back to your goals and the vision for yourself and your leadership really kind of helps you move along in the process. And just keep in mind, you can be at different levels of competency on different things, right? And so to be able to manage, like, okay, in my in my relating to people, I'm at the last level, right? But in my administrative abilities. I'm at that second level. So how are you going to manage those two things? Like, where are you going to focus your attention? And I mean, sometimes it's situational depending on what you're doing. But like, what I think this this framework does is it helps us to locate where am I at in my leadership development in all of these areas.
So the more you get on the leadership journey, I tell people all the time, now you're seeing all the things that you're messed up in. I can do this better. I can do that better. I got to get better. Leadership's all about getting better, being, continually growing. So how can leaders prioritize growth in areas where they might be consciously incompetent or unconsciously competent? Like, how do you decide what's the most important? You said, well, I got to deal with that and I got to deal with that. So, but I don't have time to do all of those things.
Yeah,
I'm busy. You're busy. So
yeah,
how do you prioritize it?
yeah. This is where the mentor or the trainer or the coach comes in, right? Because they can objectively take a look at your journey and help you figure out, okay, if you want to grow in your leadership, this is the thing to focus on, right? This is the thing that you need to work on and develop and practice in order to become a better leader. Having somebody that's walked alongside you, but a couple of steps ahead, like just having that mentor, trainer, or coach really just kind of helps you uh, to take a look at your leadership journey.
Yeah. So let's talk real quick about personal reflection and ongoing growth for leaders. What are some reflection techniques or self-assessment questions that leaders can use to continually assess
Yeah.
their competency levels?
Now, if you've never, like back to you lead out of who you are. So if you've not done the DISC assessment yet, I think that's a good first step. And if you need help with any of that, like, I know a guy, and I'm looking at him right now, or I can help you. We can help you
Yeah,
through
we can.
having a coach and having a mentor and having a trainer to kind of help
Got
you
to do it.
understand, first of all, who you are, because you lead out of who you are. And so once you get a good understanding of who you are, um, and you're working with a trainer or a coach, then that, I mean, I think that's the first step to figure
Okay.
out who you are. And
Yeah.
this assessment, a trainer or coach really helps you to do that. And then as you're leading, as you're moving in your leadership journey, to have uh to have that mentor walk alongside you really kind of help. I do want to say, I want to plug this as well. Like, if you are in a situation or on a team where there isn't a good leadership culture, then you need to get out of that. Like, no amount of work and no
Absolutely.
amount of like leadership development is going to help you if you're in a crappy leadership culture. Like, if you're in a
Yep.
leadership culture where they're micromanaging you and they just don't want to help you grow and they're not about you, then you need to get out of that
Get
situation.
out. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think, I mean, learning who you are, getting that DISC assessment is key, and then getting the mentor, the training, and the coaching just kind of really helps you in your reflection. It helps you in your practice. It helps you just um walk alongside someone and just, they can kick your butt and they can course correct and they can kind of help you in your leadership journey.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Well,
man.
let's talk about uh two quick points. I got a question for each. And the first one is I want to talk about some practical takeaways for my listeners. And so the question would be, what are some immediate steps that listeners can take away if they want to evaluate and improve their own leadership competence? You mentioned the DISC assessment, but what can they do today? What can they do right now? They get done listening to this and
Yeah.
they say, man, I'm going to take a step now. I'm going to be proactive. I'm going to do
Yeah.
what?
You're gonna journal. You're going to write down your journey. You're going to write down this is where you're at. And then
Yes.
you're going to write down goals. And then you're going to continue to write. How did I feel? You're going to reflect. You're going to evaluate your practice. And then you're going to come back to it. You're going to write better goals. And then you're going to write new practices, new goals. And then you'll be able to track your journey along the way. So what you're going to do today, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to get some notebook. You're going to figure out a way to write down your ideas. You're going to write it down and you're going to track your development. Because if you're not measuring it, if you're not tracking it, like you can't know whether you're growing or not. And so I think to writing down where you're evaluating, reflecting, writing down new goals, coming back to it again and again, rinse, repeat, repeat, just keep writing. So if you want to start writing.
I love it.
You know this lesson.
Yeah, I do. And so, so the reason I laughed right away when Lem said that, and I knew he was going to say that, is because years ago, I'm talking, this must have been over 20 years ago, Lem
Yeah.
told me, Mo, you gotta write. And I said, I do write. And he said, well, in fact, because I've been journaling since I was like 12 years old or younger, probably actually. And Lem said, well, I haven't seen any of that stuff. And this is back before the days where everything was easily put on the internet. And he said, you got a blog. And I said, are you kidding? If I put my stuff out there, somebody might say something mean to me. And he's like, that's why
Right.
you got to put it out. And
Yeah.
man, I took that plunge and it has been a game changer for me. So the leaders, listen to Lem, get your notebook today and start writing
Yeah.
stuff down. Even if you don't know what you're writing, just start writing. So
Just start writing. Right.
yeah,
You'll
so
find
that's
your
what.
voice.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so that was exciting for me. It'll be exciting for you.
Yeah.
Last question, as we look into the future, Dr. Lem, as leaders navigate through these levels of competence, how can they
Yeah.
maintain a growth mindset for the long term?
I think it's your community. It's your mentor. It's the people that you surround yourself with. If you surround yourself with losers, then you're just going to keep losing, you know? But if you surround yourself with winners, if you surround yourself with people that can build you up, people that can encourage you, people that can challenge you, then that's it. That's the winning ticket right there. Your community, the people you surround yourself with, and the mentors that you let into your life.
Man, I love it. We're going to be talking a lot more. I finally got Lem to write down a bunch of this stuff, and we've got dozens and dozens of these
Yeah,
topics. And so we're going to be bringing them to you as fast as we can sit
yeah.
down and do them.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to share these lessons. These are ones that I'm continuing to learn. And I'm really
Yeah,
excited that you wanted to record some of these. Looking forward to recording more of these lessons and just talking through, leadership development. So thank you so much.
man, you got it, brother. Thanks for being on the show again. Listeners, put this on, like Lem said, rinse and repeat. And keep going through these things, keep getting better, learn how to lead better, and never stop growing. So thanks for listening to this episode of the Rise and Tide Leadership Podcast. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks a lot, Lem.
Thanks.